Sometimes the past does not reveal itself through grand discoveries, but through quiet contradictions. A stone carved too precisely, a structure placed with impossible accuracy, an artifact that seems to belong to a different era entirely. These details appear small, at first easy to overlook, in the vast timeline of human history. Yet when enough of them begin to surface, they form a pattern that is difficult to ignore. Across continents and centuries, fragments of ancient knowledge appear again and again, hinting that parts of our past may not fit the simple story we often tell. The ruins, symbols, and forgotten technologies left behind are not just remnants of old civilizations. They are reminders that history may still be hiding chapters we have yet to discover. In the heart of modern Mexico City, beneath layers of asphalt, colonial buildings, and centuries of history, archaeologists have uncovered fragments of a forgotten world. Deep below the bustling streets lies the ancient ceremonial center of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. At the center of this sacred city once stood the towering temple known as the Templo Mayor, the spiritual heart of the Aztec Empire. For centuries, this monumental structure remained buried beneath the modern city. But in recent decades, excavations have revealed an astonishing series of discoveries: ritual offerings, sacred sculptures, ceremonial chambers, and hidden spaces connected to the religious life of the Aztec civilization. Among the most intriguing of these discoveries is a mysterious underground structure now known as the Tomb of the Eagle Warriors. The discovery immediately captured the attention of archaeologists. The chamber appeared to be connected to the elite warrior class of the Aztec world fighters, who were not only soldiers but sacred figures, deeply tied to religion, ritual, and cosmic symbolism. To understand why this tomb matters, one must first understand the role of the Eagle Warriors themselves. In the militaristic society of the Aztec civilization, warfare was more than a struggle for territory. It was a sacred duty. Capturing prisoners for ritual sacrifice was believed to sustain the gods and keep the universe in balance. Among the warriors who carried out this duty, none were more revered than the elite military orders known as the Eagle Warriors and the Jaguar Warriors. The Eagle Warriors represented the power of the sun and the sky. They wore elaborate costumes made to resemble giant birds of prey, with feathered helmets shaped like eagle heads and wings symbolizing their connection to the heavens. These warriors were believed to fight not only for the empire, but for the survival of the cosmos itself. When archaeologists began excavating the chamber beneath Templo Mayor, they quickly realized that this was not an ordinary burial site. Inside the chamber, they discovered a remarkable sculpture of a massive eagle carved from stone. The bird appears poised and powerful, its wings partially extended, its talons gripping the ground. Even after centuries underground, the carving remains astonishingly detailed. Individual feathers are carefully sculpted, giving the impression of movement and life. This eagle statue was not simply decoration. In Aztec symbolism, the eagle represented the rising sun and the triumph of light over darkness. For the Eagle Warriors, the bird embodied their spiritual transformation. After death, it was believed that fallen warriors could accompany the sun across the sky, becoming celestial guardians who helped the sun rise each morning. The chamber itself was filled with ritual objects placed with extraordinary care. Archaeologists found obsidian blades used in ceremonial sacrifices, intricately crafted ornaments, seashells from distant coasts, fragments of coral, and small sculptures representing animals and deities. These objects were arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate symbolic meaning rather than random placement. What makes these offerings even more fascinating is their geographic origin. Some materials discovered in the chamber came from regions hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away from the Aztec capital. Marine shells from tropical oceans, stones from distant mountain ranges, and rare materials from across Mesoamerica had all been brought to this sacred location. This suggests that the Aztec Empire maintained vast networks of trade and tribute stretching across the region. The tomb was not merely a burial chamber, it was a carefully constructed ceremonial environment meant to represent the world itself. Yet many questions remain unanswered. One of the most puzzling mysteries concerns the identity of the individual or individuals associated with this chamber. Surprisingly, archaeologists have not discovered a clearly identifiable human burial inside the structure. Instead, the space seems to function more like a ritual monument dedicated to the warrior order as a whole. Could this have been a symbolic tomb honoring fallen warriors rather than a grave for a specific person? Another possibility is that the chamber served as a ceremonial gateway for rituals connected to war and sacrifice. The presence of sacrificial blades and ritual objects suggests that ceremonies may have taken place here to honor the gods of war and the sun. The Aztec religious worldview was deeply tied to cosmic cycles. According to their mythology, the universe had already been destroyed and recreated multiple times. The current age, the fifth sun, was believed to survive only as long as the gods were properly nourished through ritual offerings and sacrifices. Warriors played a critical role in maintaining this cosmic balance. Captured enemies were offered to the gods so that the sun could continue its journey across the sky. Without these sacrifices, the Aztecs believed darkness would consume the world. In this context, the tomb of the Eagle Warriors may have been more than a burial chamber. It may have been a sacred space representing the connection between warfare sacrifice and the survival of the universe itself. The architecture of the chamber also raises intriguing questions. The structure was built with remarkable precision, using heavy stone blocks arranged in complex patterns. Despite the absence of advanced metal tools or modern construction technology, the builders achieved impressive levels of symmetry and stability. How these stones were transported and positioned within the dense urban environment of ancient Tenochtitlan remains partially unclear. Archaeologists know that the Aztecs relied heavily on human labor rather than draft animals or wheeled transport. Yet the scale and complexity of the construction suggest a highly organized workforce and a deep understanding of engineering principles. Even today, excavation of the area continues to reveal new surprises. Because modern Mexico City was built directly on top of the ruins of Tenochtitlan, large sections of the ancient city remain buried beneath home streets and government buildings. Each new excavation has the potential to uncover additional chambers, ritual deposits, or architectural structures that could reshape our understanding of Aztec civilization. Some researchers believe that the tomb of the Eagle Warriors may only be one part of a much larger ceremonial complex hidden beneath the city. If this is true, then countless secrets may still lie beneath the ground, waiting to be discovered. The Aztecs themselves left no written explanation describing the purpose of this chamber. Much of what historians know about their beliefs comes from surviving codices, colonial-era records, and archaeological evidence. This means that the tomb remains open to interpretation. Was it a symbolic monument honoring the elite warriors who fought for the empire? Was it a sacred chamber used during ritual ceremonies connected to war and sacrifice, or could it have served as a gateway between the earthly world and the celestial realm of the sun? For now, the answers remain uncertain. But one thing is clear: the tomb of the Eagle Warriors offers a rare glimpse into the mindset of a civilization that saw war, religion, and the cosmos as inseparable parts of the same grand system. To the Aztecs, a warrior's death was not the end of a life. It was the beginning of a transformation. In their belief, those who fell in battle could rise again alongside the sun, flying across the sky like eagles guiding the light of a new day. And somewhere beneath the modern streets of Mexico City, the silent stone eagle still waits in the darkness, guarding the secrets of a lost world. Along the northern coast of Kenya, where dense tropical forest slowly presses toward the shores of the Indian Ocean, the remains of an ancient city lie hidden beneath tangled roots and towering baobab trees. Birds nest in broken stone walls, vines crawl across old doorways. From above, the ruins appear almost swallowed by the jungle. Yet centuries ago, this place was not silent at all. It was a thriving urban center, filled with merchants, scholars, and travelers arriving from across the Indian Ocean world. This is the story of Gedi, one of East Africa's most mysterious abandoned cities. Archaeologists believe the city flourished between the 13th and 17th centuries. At its height, Gedi was a complex Swahili settlement surrounded by thick stone walls and carefully planned neighborhoods. Within those walls stood grand coral stone houses, elegant mosques, palaces, courtyards, and an intricate system of wells. The architecture reveals a society that was prosperous, organized, and deeply connected to the wider world. Yet despite its sophistication, Gedi vanished from history. No written chronicles describe its fall. No surviving records explain why its people left. By the time European travelers began exploring the East African coast, in the early modern period, the city had already been abandoned for generations. The forest had begun reclaiming its streets, and local communities spoke of the ruins with a mixture of curiosity and unease. For historians and archaeologists, this disappearance remains one of the greatest puzzles of the Swahili coast. The first clue to Gedi's significance lies in its remarkable architecture. The buildings were constructed primarily from blocks of fossilized coral stone cut from nearby coastal reefs. Working with coral is not simple. It is brittle, irregular, and difficult to shape with primitive tools. Yet the walls of Gedi are straight, stable, and carefully fitted together. Some structures still stand several meters high, despite centuries of tropical weather, vegetation growth, and erosion. The Great Mosque, one of the most impressive structures in the city, reveals the level of engineering skill possessed by its builders. Its coral stone pillars once supported a roof above a carefully oriented prayer hall facing Mecca. Nearby, large residential compounds show evidence of multi-room houses arranged around internal courtyards. Some homes even contained private washing areas and latrines connected to drainage systems, features that suggest a surprisingly advanced level of urban planning. Even more intriguing is the system of wells scattered throughout the city. These deep stone wells tapped into underground freshwater sources, allowing the population to survive in an environment where reliable surface water was scarce. Their design required a precise understanding of groundwater levels and geology. Many of these wells still hold water today, more than 400 years after the city was abandoned. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery at Gedi was not the buildings themselves, it was what archaeologists found inside them. Excavations have uncovered fragments of Chinese porcelain from the Ming Dynasty, delicate glassware from the Middle East, and beads originating from India and Persia. These objects reveal that Gedi was not an isolated settlement hidden in the forest. It was part of a vast international trade network stretching across the Indian Ocean. During the medieval period, Swahili cities along the East African coast formed a chain of powerful trading ports. Merchants sailed seasonal monsoon winds between Arabia, India, Southeast Asia, and Africa, exchanging goods such as gold, ivory, spices, and textiles. Gedi, though located slightly inland from the coastline, appears to have been closely connected to this maritime world. Goods likely moved between the port towns and the city through well-established trade routes. This raises a fascinating question. How did a city now surrounded by forest once function as a vibrant hub of global commerce? Some researchers believe the coastline may have looked very different centuries ago. Rivers, lagoons, or trade paths may have linked Gedi more directly to the sea. Others suggest that the city served as a protected inland center where wealthy merchants could live safely while conducting business through nearby ports. Whatever its role, the artifacts discovered there tell a clear story. The residents of Gedi were part of an interconnected world, one in which ideas, cultures, and goods flowed across thousands of kilometers of ocean. And yet sometime during the 17th century, everything changed. Archaeological evidence suggests that the city was not destroyed by war. There are no widespread burn layers, no collapsed fortifications, and no mass graves that would indicate violent conquest. Instead, the abandonment appears gradual but decisive. Houses were left empty, streets fell silent, wells stopped being maintained. Several theories attempt to explain this mysterious decline. One possibility involves changes in regional trade patterns. As new trade centers emerged along the East African coast, commercial activity may have shifted away from Gedi. If merchant ships began favoring other ports, the economic lifeblood of the city could have slowly drained away. Another theory focuses on environmental stress. Although Gedi possessed an impressive system of wells, groundwater levels may have changed over time. Prolonged drought or saltwater intrusion could have made the water supply unreliable, forcing residents to relocate. There is also evidence that the 17th century was a turbulent period for the Swahili coast. Portuguese naval expansion disrupted established trade networks, while regional conflicts reshaped political alliances. These pressures may have contributed to the gradual abandonment of several coastal settlements. Yet none of these explanations fully solves the mystery. Why did a city with strong defenses, advanced infrastructure, and access to international trade disappear so completely? Why were its buildings left standing rather than repurposed or rebuilt by later communities? Local traditions offer a very different explanation. For generations, people living near the ruins have spoken of Gedi as a cursed or haunted place. Stories tell of spirits that guard the abandoned city and punish those who disturb it. According to some legends, attempts to resettle the area brought misfortune to those who tried. While such tales belong to folklore rather than archaeology, they may have played a role in preserving the ruins. Fear and reverence kept the site largely untouched for centuries. As a result, Gedi remained hidden beneath the forest canopy until the early 20th century, when colonial administrators and archaeologists began systematic explorations of the site. What they discovered was astonishing: an entire stone city preserved in eerie silence. Today, walking through Gedi feels like stepping into a forgotten world. Sunlight filters through dense foliage onto ancient courtyards. The call to prayer that once echoed from the Great Mosque has long faded, replaced by the sounds of birds and wind through the trees. But the stones remain. They speak of skilled builders who mastered coral stone construction. They speak of merchants who traded with distant civilizations across the Indian Ocean. And they speak of a community that thrived for centuries before disappearing almost without a trace. In many ways, Gedi reminds us that history is not always preserved in written records. Entire cities can rise, flourish, and vanish, leaving only fragments of architecture and scattered artifacts behind. The ruins stand as silent witnesses to a chapter of human history that is still only partially understood. And perhaps the most haunting question of all remains unanswered. If a city as advanced and connected as Getty could disappear so completely from historical memory, how many other lost civilizations may still be waiting, hidden beneath forests, deserts, or oceans, waiting for their stories to be rediscovered. In the remote mountains of southern Siberia, close to the border between Russia and Mongolia, lies one of the strangest archaeological sites ever discovered in Central Asia. Surrounded by cold winds, silent valleys, and vast stretches of wilderness, a small lake called Terrakol holds a secret at its center. Rising from the still waters is a lonely island, and on that island stands the ruins of a massive ancient complex known today as Bazin. From the sky, the structure appears almost unnatural. Perfect straight walls form a giant rectangle in the middle of the lake, as if someone had drawn a geometric blueprint across the landscape. Even today, after more than 12 centuries of erosion, the outline remains strikingly clear. The fortress measures roughly 215 meters by 160 meters, with thick walls enclosing an interior space filled with the foundations of halls, courtyards, and smaller structures. The precision of the layout suggests deliberate planning, careful engineering, and a clear architectural vision. But here is the mystery. This enormous complex was built in one of the most isolated places imaginable. The surrounding region of Tuva is rugged and sparsely populated even today. In the 8th century, when Bazin was constructed, the landscape would have been even more remote. There were no large cities nearby, no major trade routes crossing the lake, and no obvious strategic advantages to building a fortress on an island in such a secluded environment. Yet someone invested enormous effort into transporting materials, organizing labor, and constructing an architectural complex of impressive scale. Archaeologists estimate that hundreds of workers must have participated in its construction. Timber had to be gathered from distant forests, earth had to be packed into massive defensive walls, and roof tiles had to be produced in large numbers. For a structure built so far from the centers of power, the logistical effort is astonishing. One of the most intriguing aspects of Bazin is its architectural style. Excavations have revealed that many elements resemble the layout of Chinese palace complexes from the Tang dynasty. The main gate faces east, following a traditional orientation common in East Asian architecture. Inside the walls, the buildings appear to have been arranged around central courtyards connected by corridors and wooden halls. Archaeologists also discovered fragments of curved roof tiles that closely resemble those used in Chinese imperial structures. This discovery raises an important question. During the 8th century, the region was controlled by the Uyghur Khaganate, a powerful steppe empire whose culture was traditionally nomadic. Nomadic societies usually built temporary structures, such as tents or wooden camps, rather than large permanent complexes with Chinese-style architecture. So why would a nomadic empire construct a building that looks more like an East Asian palace or monastery? Some historians believe that Bazin may have been influenced by diplomatic and cultural exchanges between the Uyghur rulers and the Tang dynasty. Historical records describe alliances between Uyghur leaders and Chinese emperors, including marriages between royal families. It is possible that Chinese architects or craftsmen were invited to assist in designing the complex. If so, Bazin may represent a fascinating fusion of steppe politics and Chinese architectural traditions. Yet even this explanation leaves many questions unanswered. Another puzzle concerns the purpose of the structure itself. At first glance, the high walls suggest a military fortress, but the island location complicates that interpretation. A fortress normally protects strategic territory or important trade routes. Pobazin does neither. The lake surrounding it would make supply and communication difficult, especially during harsh Siberian winters. Some researchers have proposed that the site may have been a royal residence, perhaps a seasonal palace used by a Uyghur ruler seeking isolation or prestige. Others suggest a religious function. Around the same period, the Uyghur elite adopted Manichaeism, a religion that spread across Central Asia through trade networks. Because Manichaean communities often built temple complexes with enclosed courtyards, some archaeologists believe Pobazin could have served as a monastery or ritual center. However, clear evidence of religious activity, such as statues, inscriptions, or ceremonial objects, has not been conclusively identified. The mystery deepens when scientists examine the evidence for how long the site was actually used. Surprisingly, the archaeological layers inside Pobazin contain very few artifacts associated with daily life. There are almost no household objects, no large accumulations of pottery, and very little evidence of long-term occupation. In many ancient settlements, archaeologists find clear signs that people lived there for decades or centuries. At Pobazin, those signs are strangely absent. This suggests something extraordinary. The complex may have been used only briefly after it was built. Even more intriguing are the signs of destruction. Parts of the structure appear to have collapsed suddenly, and there is evidence that fire may have damaged sections of the complex. Yet the pattern does not clearly match a typical military attack. Instead, some researchers suspect that natural forces may have played a role in the site's abandonment. The island of Pobazin sits in a region affected by permafrost and seismic activity. Geological studies indicate that earthquakes have occurred in the area during the historical period. If a major earthquake struck shortly after the construction of the complex, it could have destabilized the walls, cracked the foundations, and forced its inhabitants to abandon the site. Another possibility involves the melting and shifting of frozen ground beneath the structures, which could have caused gradual structural failure. Recent scientific techniques have added another surprising piece to the puzzle. Radiocarbon dating and tree ring analysis suggest that the complex may have been built around the year 777. This date corresponds closely with the reign of a Uyghur ruler known as Bogu Khagan, who famously adopted Manichaeism as the official religion of his empire. Some historians speculate that Pobazin might have been connected to this dramatic religious transformation, perhaps serving as a ceremonial or spiritual center during a time of political change. Yet if that was the intention, something clearly interrupted the plan. Within only a short time after construction, Pobazin appears to have been abandoned. Wind and weather gradually eroded the walls, roofs collapsed, wooden beams decayed. Over centuries, the complex turned into the silent ruins that remain today. Seen from above, the island fortress still looks strangely deliberate, almost modern in its geometric clarity. The symmetry of its walls and courtyards hints at a sophisticated design philosophy, but the absence of clear historical records leaves historians and archaeologists with only fragments of the story. Why build such an ambitious complex in such a remote place? Why design it in the style of Chinese palaces while ruling from the steppe? And why abandon it so quickly after investing so much labor and planning? Today, Pobazin sits quietly in the center of its mountain lake, surrounded by mist wind and the endless silence of the Siberian landscape. The ruins stand as a reminder that even powerful empires can leave behind mysteries that survive for centuries. Somewhere within those weathered walls lies the story of a forgotten decision, a lost purpose, or perhaps a sudden catastrophe that changed everything. And until that story is fully uncovered, the island fortress of Porbazan will remain one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites in all of Eurasia. In the dry plains of northern Iraq, not far from the modern city of Mosul, the ruins of a vast ancient city lie scattered beneath layers of dust and time. At first glance, the remains appear like many other archaeological sites. Across Mesopotamia, collapsed walls, broken stone blocks, fragments of carvings weathered by centuries of wind. But beneath this quiet landscape once stood one of the most ambitious urban experiments of the ancient world. This city was Dur-Sharrukin, the royal capital, built by the powerful Assyrian king Sargon II in the 8th century BCE. Its name meant Fortress of Sargon. Unlike cities that evolved slowly over generations, Dur-Sharrukin appeared almost suddenly in history. According to inscriptions, Sargon ordered the construction of an entirely new capital, from the ground-up walls, temples, palaces, administrative buildings, gardens, and massive gates, all designed according to a carefully planned urban layout. At the center of the city stood the king's enormous Great Palace, a monumental complex intended to symbolize imperial authority. Yet scattered throughout the city were other structures, smaller palatial buildings that archaeologists now refer to as the minor palaces of Khorsabad. At first, these buildings seemed secondary, almost administrative in nature, but as excavations progressed, researchers began to realize that these quieter structures may hold some of the most intriguing mysteries of the entire city. Because, unlike the Grand Royal Palace, many questions about these smaller palaces remain unanswered. One of the first mysteries surrounding Khorsabad is the astonishing speed of its construction. Ancient inscriptions suggest that Dur-Sharrukin was built within roughly a decade. In that short period, engineers and laborers constructed a city covering nearly 3 square kilometers, enclosed by massive defensive walls, stretching over 24 meters high. Within those walls rose dozens of monumental buildings, including temples, administrative centers, and residential palaces. The minor palaces were part of this carefully orchestrated design. Their courtyards, halls, and chambers followed strict geometric patterns aligned with the broader street network of the city. Such precision raises an intriguing question. How did Assyrian planners coordinate a construction project of this scale without the surveying instruments or engineering technologies we associate with large modern urban planning? The layout suggests the use of advanced measurement techniques. Walls are aligned with remarkable consistency. Courtyards maintain proportional symmetry, and passageways appear positioned to regulate movement through the complexes. It was not random construction, it was calculated. Yet the exact methods used by Assyrian engineers remain uncertain. Like the Great Royal Palace, several minor palaces were protected by colossal stone figures placed at their entrances. These statues were known as Lamassu mythical guardians, with the body of a bull, wings of an eagle, and the head of a human king. To the Assyrians, they served both symbolic and spiritual roles, protectors of royal spaces and manifestations of divine power. But their construction presents a technical puzzle. Many Lamassu statues weigh between 15 and 30 tons. Each was carved from a single block of limestone or alabaster and then transported from distant quarries to the city. Once there, the statues had to be lifted into position beside palace gateways with extraordinary precision. Reliefs discovered at another Assyrian site, Nineveh, show teams of workers dragging colossal statues using ropes and wooden sledges. Yet even these depictions do not fully explain the logistics behind transporting and positioning such massive sculptures across uneven terrain. The entrances of the minor palaces show clear evidence that similar statues once stood there as well. Today, some remain partially buried or fragmented. Their silent presence hints at the immense engineering effort that once surrounded them. Inside the minor palace, archaeologists uncovered another remarkable feature: long corridors and ceremonial rooms lined with intricately carved stone panels. These reliefs were carved into slabs of alabaster, a soft stone that allowed artists to create incredibly detailed imagery. Scenes depict royal hunts, military campaigns, religious rituals, and elaborate court ceremonies. At first glance, the carvings appear decorative, but closer examination reveals extraordinary craftsmanship. Individual strands of hair feathers of birds and folds of clothing are rendered with astonishing precision. The sculptors managed to achieve both depth and movement within the stone surface, creating the illusion that the figures almost emerge from the walls. What tools were capable of producing such delicate work more than 700 years ago? Iron tools existed during the Assyrian period, but the exact techniques used by palace artisans remain debated. Some researchers believe specialized chisels and abrasives were employed. Others suspect that teams of highly trained craftsmen worked in carefully organized workshops attached to the royal court. Whatever the process, the result was a visual narrative carved into stone, a permanent record of imperial power. And the minor palaces, though smaller than the king's residence, were filled with these artistic masterpieces. Excavations of the minor palaces have revealed complex internal layouts. Courtyards lead into reception halls, which connect to smaller chambers arranged in tight sequences. Some rooms appear administrative in nature, perhaps used for storing documents or coordinating regional governance. Others seem more ceremonial, possibly hosting diplomatic meetings or official rituals. Yet several chambers have puzzled archaeologists. Some are unusually narrow, others lack obvious entrances. Certain corridors seem to lead nowhere, while a few rooms appear sealed or isolated from the rest of the complex. Without surviving written records describing the functions of these buildings, interpreting their purpose becomes difficult. Were these private residences for members of the royal family, offices for high-ranking officials, or secure spaces for storing valuable goods collected from across the vast Assyrian Empire? For now, the stones remain silent. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Khorsabad lies not in its construction, but in its fate. Dur-Sharrukin was meant to be the shining heart of the Assyrian Empire. Sargon II poured enormous resources into its creation, relocating artisans, laborers, and administrators to build his new capital. Yet the city's life was astonishingly brief. In 705 BCE, Sargon II died during a military campaign. Shortly afterward, his successor abandoned Dur-Sharrukin and moved the imperial capital back to Nineveh. The reasons remain uncertain. Some historians believe the decision was political. Others suspect religious or symbolic concerns connected to the king's death in battle, a fate considered ominous in Assyrian belief. Whatever the cause, the city that had required years of labor was suddenly left behind. Its palaces, including the smaller ones scattered across the city, were never fully occupied. Today, Khorsabad is a landscape of quiet ruins. The walls that once displayed the power of Assyria lie broken. The Lamassu guardians stand fractured or removed to museums. Courtyards that once echoed with official scribes and soldiers now hold only wind and sand. And among the remains, the minor palaces still sit quietly within the ruins of Dur-Sharrukin. They were built as part of one of the most ambitious architectural projects of the ancient world. Yet the people who were meant to live and work within them may never have truly done so. Because history sometimes leaves behind places that feel unfinished, cities planned for eternity but abandoned almost before their story began. Khorsabad may be one of those places, a capital built with extraordinary precision, filled with stone guardians, carved narratives, and carefully planned halls. And then, almost as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished into silence. Across the frozen expanse of Antarctica, where winds can reach hurricane strength and temperatures plunge far below freezing, the landscape appears lifeless and untouched. Endless fields of ice stretch toward the horizon, broken only by jagged mountain ridges rising from the white desert. For centuries, this continent remained one of the last truly unknown regions on Earth. Even today, despite satellites, research stations, and advanced mapping technology, vast portions of Antarctica remain unexplored. But in recent years, a curious set of images began circulating across the internet and within certain scientific discussions. Satellite photographs revealed several mountains whose shapes appeared strangely familiar. Their sides seemed steep and symmetrical. Their peaks rose sharply from the surrounding ice, and from certain angles, they looked remarkably like pyramids. These formations, sometimes referred to as the Antarctic Pyramids, quickly became the center of intense speculation. Some observers immediately dismissed the idea as coincidence. Mountains can take on many forms through natural geological processes. Wind erosion, glacial carving, and tectonic pressure can sculpt rock into surprisingly geometric shapes. Yet others were not so easily convinced. The mountains in question seemed to display multiple faces, converging toward a single apex, an appearance strikingly similar to the famous pyramids of ancient Egypt or the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica. What made the images even more intriguing was their location. These pyramid-shaped peaks lie within the remote Ellsworth Mountains, one of the most isolated mountain ranges on Earth. Located deep within Antarctica, far from the nearest research stations, the region is buried beneath thick layers of ice and snow. Few humans have ever seen these mountains up close. Most of what we know about them comes from satellite imagery and aerial surveys, and that distance has allowed speculation to flourish. Some alternative researchers have proposed that the structures might not be natural mountains at all. Instead, they argue they could be ancient constructions, massive pyramids built by a forgotten civilization long before Antarctica became the frozen wasteland we know today. According to this theory, the continent may once have been far warmer, capable of supporting life and perhaps even human settlement. Interestingly, geology does confirm one part of this idea. Antarctica was not always covered in ice. Millions of years ago, during the time of the dinosaurs, the continent supported forests, rivers, and diverse ecosystems. Fossil evidence shows that trees once grew across large portions of Antarctica. Ancient pollen leaves and even remains of prehistoric animals have been discovered beneath the ice. The continent was once part of the supercontinent Gondwana and sat in a very different climate system. However, there is an enormous gap between this prehistoric warm Antarctica and the appearance of human civilization. Modern humans did not emerge until hundreds of thousands of years ago, and complex civilizations developed only within the past 10,000 years. Still, the idea of ancient structures beneath Antarctic ice has proven difficult for many people to ignore. One reason is the striking geometry of certain peaks. In satellite photographs, some mountains appear to form nearly triangular faces that slope upward toward a central point. The angles between these faces can resemble the symmetrical slopes seen in pyramid architecture. But geologists have an explanation for this phenomenon. The formations may be what scientists call glacial horns. These are mountains shaped by multiple glaciers, eroding their sides simultaneously. Over long periods of time, often hundreds of thousands or millions of years, glaciers carve away rock from different directions. Eventually, the remaining peak becomes sharply pointed with several steep faces meeting at the summit. One of the most famous examples of this process is the Matterhorn in the Alps, a mountain whose iconic pyramid-like shape was created entirely by natural erosion. According to researchers who have studied the Ellsworth Mountains, the Antarctic pyramid shapes likely formed in a similar way. Powerful glaciers once surrounded these peaks, grinding and cutting away the rock from multiple sides until the remaining summit took on a geometric form. In other words, nature itself may be the architect. Yet for some observers, the explanation does not fully resolve the mystery. Several of the Antarctic peaks appear unusually symmetrical. Some display 4 distinct sides, an arrangement that feels uncannily reminiscent of human-built pyramids. The idea that natural erosion could produce such shapes is scientifically plausible, but the resemblance continues to spark curiosity. Another factor fueling speculation is Antarctica's immense ice sheet. In some places, the ice covering the continent reaches depths of more than 4 kilometers. Beneath this frozen layer lie mountains, valleys, lakes, and landscapes that have been sealed away for millions of years. Radar scans have revealed entire hidden mountain ranges and subglacial lakes trapped beneath the ice. This means that the visible pyramid-shaped peaks might represent only the very tips of much larger structures hidden below. Of course, this does not imply that those hidden formations are artificial. They are almost certainly natural geological features. But the sheer scale of what lies beneath Antarctica reminds scientists how little we truly know about the continent. The difficulty of conducting research there adds another layer to the mystery. Antarctica is the harshest environment on Earth. Blizzards can appear suddenly, temperatures can drop below -50 degrees Celsius, and transporting heavy equipment across the ice is enormously challenging. Large-scale excavation projects are nearly impossible in most areas. As a result, many regions of the continent remain largely unexplored. Because of this, the pyramid debate persists. Scientists tend to approach the question with caution and rely on established geological processes to explain the shapes. Most agree that the Antarctic pyramids are simply mountains carved by the glaciers over vast spans of time. But the human mind is naturally drawn to patterns. When we see symmetry in nature, especially shapes that resemble human architecture, it can be difficult to resist imagining deeper possibilities. Could there be ancient secrets hidden beneath the ice? Could Antarctica still hold undiscovered traces of Earth's distant past? For now, there is no evidence that any civilization ever built pyramids in Antarctica. All available geological data strongly supports natural explanations. Yet the images remain captivating. Against the endless white of the Antarctic ice sheet, these sharp peaks rise like silent monuments. Their slopes catch the low polar sunlight, casting long shadows across the frozen landscape. From space, they appear almost perfectly sculpted, standing alone in one of the most remote places on the planet. Perhaps they are simply mountains shaped by ice and time. Or perhaps they remind us of something deeper, how little of our own planet we truly understand. Antarctica remains a frontier not just of geography, but of knowledge. Beneath its ice lie secrets stretching back millions of years, waiting patiently for discovery. And until those hidden landscapes are fully explored, the so-called Antarctic pyramids will continue to inspire a question that has echoed through every age of exploration. Are we truly seeing everything that is there, or only the small part that the ice has allowed us to glimpse? Across the deserts of northern Sudan, along the ancient banks of the Nile, stand a series of temples carved directly into the living rock. From a distance, they appear silent and immovable, their sandstone walls glowing under the harsh desert sun. But hidden beneath some of these monuments lies a set of spaces that few visitors ever notice narrow corridors, descending passages, and deeply carved chambers cut far below the visible sanctuary floors? These are the lower chambers of the Nubian rock-cut temples, and they remain one of the most intriguing architectural mysteries of the ancient Nile world. The region historically known as Nubia was once home to powerful kingdoms that interacted constantly with ancient Egypt. For centuries, this landscape formed a cultural frontier, a place where Egyptian religious traditions blended with local Nubian beliefs and technologies. During periods of Egyptian control, especially under rulers like Ramesses II, massive temples were carved into cliffs along the Nile Valley. These structures were designed not only as places of worship, but also as statements of political power, carved directly into the earth itself. At first glance, many Nubian rock-cut temples follow architectural patterns that archaeologists recognize from Egyptian sacred design. There are entrance pylons, courtyards, halls supported by carved pillars, and inner sanctuaries that once housed sacred statues. But careful exploration has revealed something unexpected beneath some of these temples. Hidden spaces cut deep into the bedrock, sometimes accessible only by narrow stairways or steep descending corridors. These lower chambers were not simple storage rooms. Their construction required enormous effort. Workers had to cut downward through solid sandstone, removing tons of rock, while maintaining stable ceilings and straight walls. Even today, many of these underground spaces show remarkably smooth surfaces and surprisingly regular geometry. The walls align with careful precision, and in some corridors, the angles appear almost perfectly squared. For archaeologists, this raises an immediate question. How did ancient builders working with relatively simple tools achieve such controlled excavation deep within solid stone? Unlike modern mining or tunneling, ancient stone cutting depended primarily on chisels, hammerstones, and copper or bronze tools. Progress would have been slow and physically exhausting. Yet in several Nubian temples, the lower chambers extend well beyond what would be necessary for a simple hidden room. Some passages descend several meters beneath the main floor of the temple, creating an underground level that required planning long before the temple itself was finished. This implies that the architects designed the entire structure, including the hidden spaces, before the first chisel struck the rock. But the deeper mystery concerns purpose. In most ancient temples of Egypt and Nubia, the most sacred areas are located at the highest and most protected point inside the temple complex. Moving inward symbolized approaching the divine. The architecture was symbolic from light into darkness, from the public world into the hidden domain of the gods. Yet in some Nubian temples, the sacred journey may have extended downward rather than inward. Several of the lower chambers show signs that they were not merely unfinished excavations. Some contain niches carved into the walls. Others have carefully shaped floors that suggest ritual use rather than storage. In a few cases, traces of soot or ancient lamps indicate that these spaces were once deliberately illuminated in an otherwise completely dark environment. Imagine what such a descent might have looked like thousands of years ago. A narrow staircase leading beneath the temple floor. Torchlight flickering against carved sandstone walls, priests descending slowly into a chamber hidden from the outside world. If these spaces were used for rituals, they may have represented a symbolic journey into the underworld, an idea deeply embedded in ancient Nile religions. In Egyptian cosmology, the sun itself traveled through the underworld every night before rising again at dawn. Temples sometimes reflected this cosmic journey through their architecture, but the Nubian lower chambers may represent a variation of this concept, one adapted to local traditions and beliefs that archaeologists still struggle to fully understand. Another curious feature of these underground rooms is their environmental stability. The deserts of northern Sudan experience extreme temperatures. During the day, the heat can be intense, while nights can become surprisingly cool. Yet deep within the rock-cut chambers, the temperature remains far more constant. The thick sandstone surrounding the rooms acts as a natural insulator, shielding the interior from sudden temperature changes. For ancient societies, this type of stable environment could have been extremely valuable. Some researchers have suggested that these chambers may have been used to protect sacred objects, ritual equipment, or possibly organic materials that needed protection from the desert climate. Others propose that the spaces functioned as ceremonial vaults, accessible only to a small group of temple officials. Yet in several excavated chambers, archaeologists found surprisingly few artifacts. This absence is puzzling. If the rooms were meant to store sacred items, why were they left empty? Were the objects removed in antiquity, or were the chambers designed for rituals that left little physical evidence behind? The mystery deepens in locations, where the entrances to lower chambers appear to have been intentionally sealed. Stone blocks carefully placed across passages suggest that some underground spaces were deliberately closed at some point in the past. In certain cases, the sealing appears to have occurred not in modern times, but during the ancient period itself. Whoever sealed these passages may have wanted to prevent access permanently. But why? One possibility is that the chambers contained sacred spaces no longer meant to be entered once certain rituals ended. In many ancient cultures, sealing a sacred chamber was a way of preserving its spiritual power. Another possibility is more practical. The passages may have led to spaces that were considered too dangerous or unstable after centuries of use. Yet the careful placement of sealing stones suggests intention rather than emergency. Even today, archaeologists continue to explore Nubian temple sites along the Nile, searching for clues about these hidden underground spaces. Many temples remain only partially excavated, and in some cases, modern technology such as ground-penetrating radar is beginning to reveal hints of additional voids beneath known structures. Each discovery raises new questions. How widespread were these underground chambers across Nubian temple architecture? Were they unique features of certain religious traditions? Or are they remnants of a ritual practice that has not yet been fully recognized? What makes the mystery even more fascinating is that Nubia itself was never simply a copy of Egyptian civilization. Although Egyptian influence was strong, Nubian societies developed their own identities, technologies, and spiritual traditions. The underground chambers may represent one of those uniquely Nubian expressions of sacred architecture. To the ancient builders who carved these temples from sandstone cliffs, the lower chambers may have held profound symbolic meaning, places where the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the divine became thin. But today, standing in those silent stone corridors, archaeologists can only speculate. The torches are gone, the rituals are forgotten, and the priests who once descended into the darkness beneath the temples have vanished into history. Yet the chambers remain, hidden below the temples of Nubia, carved into the rock of the desert itself. They continue to challenge our understanding of how ancient civilizations designed their sacred spaces. Each corridor, each sealed passage, and each empty underground room is a reminder that even in regions studied for centuries, the ancient world still holds secrets beneath the surface. And somewhere beneath those temples, perhaps in chambers that have yet to be opened, the purpose of these mysterious underground spaces may still be waiting to be discovered. High above the forests of southern Ohio, a massive shape lies silently across a narrow plateau. From ground level, it appears as nothing more than a series of gentle ridges, rising from the earth long grassy curves that follow the contour of the land. But when viewed from the sky, the true form reveals itself. A giant serpent, stretching across the hilltop for more than 400 meters, the ancient earthwork coils and bends in a precise pattern, its body looping through a series of graceful curves before ending in a dramatic head. At the front of the figure, the serpent's open mouth appears to swallow, or perhaps cradle, a mysterious oval shape. This is the Great Serpent Mound, one of the most enigmatic prehistoric monuments in North America. Unlike pyramids, temples, or tombs, it contains no chambers, no stone structures, and no visible artifacts. It is simply earth, carefully shaped soil, and clay. Yet its scale, precision, and symbolism have puzzled archaeologists for more than a century. Who built it? Why was it created? And how did its builders design such a massive figure long before aerial views were possible? These questions continue to surround the mound with an aura of mystery. The Great Serpent Mound lies along the edge of a steep plateau overlooking Brush Creek in present-day Ohio. The structure itself measures roughly 411 meters in length, making it the largest surviving effigy mound in the world. Its body forms a winding series of coils that gradually narrow toward the tail, while the head rises dramatically above the surrounding terrain. The construction itself appears deceptively simple. The mound was built from layers of earth, clay, and stone gathered from the surrounding landscape. Over time, the builders shaped these materials into a raised embankment about 1 to 1.5 meters high. Today, the structure is covered in grass, blending naturally with the hilltop, but beneath the surface lies a carefully engineered formation that has endured for centuries. What makes the monument remarkable is not only its size, but its design. The curves of the serpent are not random. Each bend appears intentional, creating a flowing, almost lifelike motion across the plateau. When seen from above, the proportions of the body remain consistent and balanced, suggesting that the builders followed a precise plan. But this raises a perplexing problem. The people who constructed the mound lived in a time long before balloons, aircraft, or satellites. They could never have seen the full figure from the sky. Yet somehow they created a design that only becomes clear from an aerial perspective. How did they achieve such accuracy? Some archaeologists believe the builders may have used a system of wooden stakes, ropes, and carefully measured distances to map the serpent's form on the ground. Others suggest that elevated observation points along the surrounding hills might have allowed planners to visualize the design from higher ground. But even with these possibilities, the scale of the project remains extraordinary. Creating such a massive figure would have required coordination, planning, and knowledge of geometry far beyond what many once assumed prehistoric societies possessed. Another mystery lies within the mound itself. Many ancient earthworks across North America served as burial sites. Archaeologists frequently discover human remains, ceremonial objects, or ritual structures inside them. But the Great Serpent Mound appears different. Excavations have revealed no central burial chamber, no hidden tomb, and no clear evidence of funerary activity. The mound seems to exist purely as a symbolic form. This absence has led researchers to consider other possibilities. Perhaps the serpent was a sacred figure, an embodiment of spiritual beliefs or mythological stories that have long since vanished. Across many ancient cultures, serpents represented powerful cosmic forces, creation, transformation, fertility, or the cycle of life and death. In this interpretation, the mound may have functioned as a ceremonial landscape, a sacred place where rituals were performed beneath the open sky. But another possibility has drawn increasing attention among researchers. The serpent may have been connected to the heavens. Studies of the mound's orientation suggests that certain points along its body align with astronomical events. The head of the serpent appears to face the direction of the summer solstice sunset, the longest day of the year. Meanwhile, parts of the winding body may correspond to lunar cycles or other celestial patterns. If these alignments were intentional, the mound might have served as a kind of cosmic marker, linking the movements of the sky with the sacred symbolism of the serpent. For ancient societies that relied on seasonal cycles for survival, such knowledge would have been invaluable. Tracking the sun and moon could help determine planting seasons, migration patterns, and ritual calendars. Yet if the mound truly reflects astronomical alignments, it suggests that its builders possessed an advanced understanding of the sky, one achieved through generations of careful observation. Even the age of the Great Serpent Mound remains uncertain. For many years, archaeologists believed it was created by the Adena culture, a prehistoric society that flourished in the Ohio Valley roughly 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. The Adena people were known for constructing large burial mounds and earthworks across the region, making them logical candidates as the builders. But later research complicated this theory. Radiocarbon dating from nearby charcoal deposits suggested that the mound might instead have been constructed around the 11th century by a later culture known as Fort Ancient. If this interpretation is correct, the monument could have been built shortly after the appearance of Halley's Comet in the year 1066, a dramatic celestial event that may have inspired symbolic constructions. The debate remains unresolved. Without definitive artifacts or inscriptions, the true origin of the mound continues to elude historians. Adding another layer to the mystery is the land itself. The plateau on which the serpent rests sits directly on top of an ancient geological structure known as the Serpent Mound Crater, the remnants of a massive meteorite impact that occurred more than 250 million years ago. This ancient collision fractured the bedrock beneath the region, creating unusual geological formations and exposing rare minerals along the surface. Whether the builders of the mound understood the geological significance of the site is unknown. Yet it is possible that the landscape itself appeared unusual or sacred to the people who lived there. The dramatic cliffs, the winding creek below, and the elevated ridge would have created a powerful natural setting for ritual or symbolic architecture. Today, the Great Serpent Mound remains both a cultural treasure and an archaeological puzzle. For more than 1,000 years, perhaps much longer, the massive serpent has rested quietly across the Ohio hillside, its coils preserved through generations of storms, seasons, and changing civilizations. Its builders left no written records. No inscriptions explain its purpose. No legends survive to describe its meaning. All that remains is the shape itself, a silent symbol carved into the earth. A serpent, stretching across the land, its mouth open toward the horizon, frozen in a moment that has lasted for centuries. And as researchers continue to study its curves, alignments, and origins, one question still lingers over the ancient monument. Was the Great Serpent Mound simply a work of symbolic art, created by prehistoric builders? Or was it part of a much deeper system of knowledge, one connecting the earth, the sky, and the mysteries of an ancient world we are only beginning to understand?